There's a restaurant 2 blocks from your house that's been there for 8 years. Good food, loyal customers, always busy on weekends. Next month, it'll be gone. Not because of a scandal, not because people stopped coming, because of a photocopier lease they signed in 2019. Small business failure isn't dramatic. There's no explosion, no villain, just a slow mathematical suffocation that happens in spreadsheets nobody reads until it's too late. 65% of small businesses that close weren't killed by competition. They were killed by their own operating costs creeping up faster than their revenue. Death by 1,000 invoices. Here's how it actually happens. A business opens. Year one is survival mode. They're watching every dollar. But then something dangerous occurs. They stabilize. Revenue becomes predictable. And that's when the invisible bleed starts. First, it's small. A software subscription increases from $49 to $79. The owner doesn't notice because it's auto-billed. Then the landlord raises rent 4%. Not enough to renegotiate, just enough to accept. Then insurance goes up. Then payment processing fees increase by 0.3%. Individually, none of these matter. Collectively, they're compounding. Let's put numbers to it. A cafe doing $30,000 a month in revenue. Profit margin of 12%. That's $3,600 they actually keep. Sounds fine. But over 3 years, if costs increase just 5% annually while revenue grows 3%, that 12% margin becomes 6%, then 2%, then negative. The owner doesn't see it coming because revenue is still growing. They're doing more business than ever. But the gap between what comes in and what goes out is closing like a slow-motion vice. By the time they realize the math doesn't work anymore, they're already 6 months behind on vendor payments. But here's the part that doesn't make sense until you see it. Most of these costs aren't negotiable on the way up. That photocopier lease, 5-year contract, early termination fee equals the remaining balance. The POS system, locked into a processing rate that was competitive in 2020 but is highway robbery now. The insurance policy that auto-renewed at a 19% increase? Good luck finding cheaper coverage mid-term without a gap that exposes you to catastrophic risk. The business isn't just bleeding, it's locked into the bleeding. And the cruelest part? The things that were supposed to help them scale are what kill them. They bought the expensive oven because it could handle more volume, financed it over 7 years. Now they're paying for capacity they'll never use because they can't afford the ingredients to fill it. They hired a manager to free up the owner's time. Now the owner drives Uber 3 nights a week to cover payroll. Meanwhile, the advice they get is insulting. Consultants tell them to increase prices, but they're already more expensive than the chain across the street. Marketing experts say they need better social media presence, so they spend $800 a month on Instagram ads that generate likes but not customers who actually show up. Business coaches tell them to focus on their mindset. Their mindset is fine. Their lease just went up 17%. This is where the math becomes genuinely dark. Most small business owners don't take a salary for the first 2 years. They pay themselves last. So when margins compress, they're not cutting into profit, they're cutting into their own survival. They start using personal credit cards to cover business shortfalls, then a home equity line of credit. Then they're having conversations with their spouse about selling the house. The business that was supposed to build their future is now eating it. And it's not isolated. The average lifespan of a small business in the U.S. is 8.5 years. Not because they fail to find customers, because they fail to outrun their own cost structure. The SBA did a study. 82% of small businesses that fail cite cash flow problems, not lack of demand, not bad products, just a slow realization that the unit economics were never going to work at the scale they could actually achieve. What makes this vicious is that it's nearly invisible from the outside. The restaurant still looks open. The shelves are stocked. Customers have no idea the owner is 3 months behind on rent and negotiating with the landlord to avoid eviction. The failure happens in private, in back offices, in conversations with accountants who gently suggest it might be time to consider options. By the time the going out of business sign appears, the decision was made 6 months ago. The closing sale isn't a last-ditch effort. It's a funeral that's already been planned. So the next time you see a closed storefront and wonder what happened, the answer is probably simpler and sadder than you think. Nobody stopped caring. Nobody made a catastrophic mistake. The numbers just stopped adding up. And in business, that's the only math that matters. The question nobody asks until it's too late: at what scale does this actually become profitable enough to survive its own costs? Most never find out.